I was offered $1 million to work on Christmas Eve. It was a trap. I've always been thin, not gym fit, but structurally thin, naturally gaunt. My bones are fine, my shoulders narrow, my ribcage compact. In school, they called me skeleton. In adulthood, this trait made me the perfect candidate for jobs no one else could do: cleaning industrial air conditioning ducts, repairing ancient sewage pipes, urban spelunking. I fit where no one else fits. That is my skill, but it was this skill that put me in the leather chair of Mr. Valdemir Clove, in a penthouse in Sao Paulo, signing my own death warrant. The ad was discreet, seeking individual with high flexibility and tolerance for confined spaces for Christmas artistic performance. Payment $1,000,000. Life risk calculated. Clove was a construction tycoon. A man obsessed with brutalism and concrete. He didn't smile. He looked at me as if he were measuring the diameter of my skull with his eyes. Christmas is a logistical lie, he said, pouring pure vodka into 2 glasses. The physics of a fat man descending a 30x30 centimeter masonry duct is impossible. I want to prove the opposite. I want to prove the myth is achievable if the man is adaptable. You want me to go down a chimney, I asked. And not just any chimney, the chimney. He pressed a button, and a holographic model appeared on the table. It was a colossal structure, a vertical tube of refractory brick and concrete descending 60 meters, about 200 feet, full of curves, bottlenecks, siphons, and soot. I built this on my property in the countryside. It is a Christmas intrusion simulator. The goal is simple. You enter through the top at midnight on the 24th. You must reach the fireplace in the basement before dawn. If you deliver the present, the $1 million is yours. And if I get stuck? I asked. Clove smiled, gold teeth. There are rescue teams, but the structure is solid. To get you out of there, we would have to demolish the tower, which would take days. So my suggestion is, don't get stuck. Use gravity. Exhale the air from your lungs to descend. I accepted. I should have refused, but my mother was on the waiting list for a marrow transplant, and the money would buy the best treatment in the world. I sold myself for love, like so many other idiots. December 24th. 11:45 p.m. The tower stood in the middle of an empty field lit by floodlights. It looked like an industrial obelisk, ugly and dark. There was no house around it, just the tower, and buried deep below in the earth, the bunker, simulating the living room. I was taken to the top by a crane. The suit wasn't velvet. It was Kevlar-y, in forced red spandex, extremely tight, lubricated with a transparent industrial gel. The hat was an aerodynamic helmet. The sack of gifts was a metal cylinder attached to my ankle by a steel chain. What's in the cylinder? I asked the engineer, checking my gear. Dead weight. He said, avoiding my eyes, to help with the descent. Good luck, Santa. Try not to breathe too deep. They positioned me at the mouth of the chimney. It was dark. The smell rising from it wasn't burning wood. It smelled of mold, oil, and something sweet, cloying. I looked down. Total darkness. Go. The radio in my ear crackled. It was Clove's voice. I slid inside. The first 10 meters were easy. The duct was about 50 centimeters wide. I could descend using my legs and back to control the speed, chimneying technique, ironically. But at 20 meters, the duct changed. It narrowed. Now, the walls touched my chest and back simultaneously. I had to keep my arms stretched above my head, because there was no room for them at my sides. I descended centimeter by centimeter, emptying the air from my lungs to reduce my chest volume, sliding and taking short inhales to lock in place. Exhale, slide, lock, exhale, slide, lock. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of fabric scraping against rough brick and my panting breath. The cylinder attached to my foot banged against the walls below. Stage 1 complete. Clove's voice sounded in my ear. Entering the compression zone, the duct made a gentle curve to the right. The problem is that bricks don't make gentle curves. The edges cut into me through the suit. I felt the pressure increase. Now, the duct wasn't square. It was irregular. There were protrusions, plaster intentionally applied poorly to scratch. I felt panic try to claw at my brain, the urge to scream, to kick. Calm down, I thought. You are liquid. You are oil. Slide. That was when I hit the first obstacle. My boot touched something soft. It wasn't the bottom. It was something stuck to the wall. I shined the light mounted on my helmet downward. There was a clump of fur. No, it was hair. Long gray human hair stuck in the mortar between the bricks. and a piece of torn red fabric. "Clove," I called, there's something here. Ignore it. Residue from previous tests," he said. "Tests with dummies?" I asked. Silence on the radio. "Clove, they were dummies, right? Keep descending, Santa. The clock is ticking." Fear froze my stomach. I hadn't been the first. I tried to pass the clump of hair. My foot got tangled. I kicked to shake it loose. Something fell down into the dark. Something that made the sound of dry bone hitting stone. I kept descending, shaking. At 40 meters, the heat began. The walls were hot. Not fire hot, but hot like the skin of someone with a fever. The lubricating gel started to get sticky. Sweat ran inside the suit, stinging my scratches. The air became unbearable. I pulled in air, and it tasted like ash. I reached the siphon. It was a U-bend. I had to go down, crawl sideways through a horizontal section, then go up a bit to go down again. The horizontal part was the worst. It was so narrow my helmet scraped the ceiling and the floor. I had to turn my head sideways. I got stuck halfway. My shoulders locked. The cylinder on my foot was heavy, pulling me back, but I needed to go forward. I tried to push with my toes. Nothing. I was trapped. 40 meters deep, buried alive in a concrete gut. I'm stuck. I whispered, trying to save oxygen. "I see," Clove said. He had cameras inside. "The siphon is the filter. It separates the nice boys from the naughty ones. Dislocate your shoulder." "What?" "Your shoulders are too broad for this passage. Dislocate your left shoulder. It's the only way." I started to cry, tears of rage and terror. "I'm not doing that. Get me out of here." "There is no getting you out, Davy. Either you advance or you stay there. And in 2 hours the chimney's automatic heating system will turn on to clean the residue. You will cook." Bastard, he planned this. I looked at the brick wall 5 centimeters from my nose. There were scratch marks there. Fingernails that had dug into the brick until they broke. Someone died here, in this exact spot. I wasn't going to die. Not for him. I took a deep breath, as much as the space allowed. I braced my left arm against a brick ledge. I closed my eyes. I thought about my mother. I thought about the million. I thrust my body forward violently while locking my arm backward. I heard the snap, crack. The pain was blinding. I felt the head of my humerus pop out of the socket. My arm went limp, useless, hanging at the wrong angle. I screamed, but the sound had nowhere to go. It came back to my ears, deafening, but it worked. With the collapsed shoulder, I gained the 3 centimeters I needed. I dragged myself through the siphon, crying, drooling with pain, pulling my body with just my right arm and my legs. I made it through. My left arm dragged behind me an anchor of dead meat. I fell into the final vertical section, another 20 meters. Here, the duct widened a little, but the walls changed. They were no longer brick. They were smooth, moist. I touched the wall with my good hand. It was soft. It yielded to the touch, and it pulsed. Meat, no. It was some kind of synthetic, biological lining. It felt like the inside of a giant esophagus. And it stank. It smelled of gastric juice and rotting flesh. Welcome to the throat. Clove's voice sounded excited, almost there. "The gift, Davy. Don't forget the gift." I looked down. The cylinder was still attached to my foot. I slid down through that slime. The pain in my shoulder was throbbing, making my vision flicker. I reached the bottom. There was no fireplace. There was no room with a Christmas tree. There was a metal grate. And beneath the grate, fire, real fire, crackling, orange flames licking the metal. And below the fire, I saw the room. It was an incinerator, a gigantic industrial furnace, and in the middle of the fire, there was a thing. It wasn't a decorative fireplace. It was an altar. There were charred bones down there, small skulls, large skulls, and remnants of red clothes. The previous Santas. They didn't get stuck. They reached the end. And they were burned. I stopped on top of the grate. The heat was unbearable. My boots started to melt. "Clove," I screamed, "there's fire. How do I get out?" "The delivery, Davy. The contract says, deliver the gift to the fireplace. Throw the cylinder." I looked at the cylinder attached to my ankle. There was a lock. I felt my belt. There was a small key they had given me. I opened the cylinder. Inside there were no toys. There was meat. Pieces of raw, bloody meat. "Huge steaks, viscera. What is this?" I asked, desperate. "Food," said Clove. "What lives in the pit is hungry. The fire is just to keep it warm. Throw the meat. If it eats the meat, maybe it will let you pass." I looked through the flames. Something moved under the charred bones. A black hand, charred but alive, with fingers of molten metal. A creature lived in the fire. Clove's Christmas spirit was an ash demon. I had to open the grate, throw the meat, and jump. No, I had to throw the meat and pray the grate opened. I threw the meat through the bars of the grate. The thing in the fire stirred. It grabbed the pieces of meat voraciously, swallowing without chewing. I heard the hiss of burning fat. Now, screamed Clove, the grate will open for 10 seconds while it eats. Jump, the exit is behind the altar. The grate opened with a mechanical screech. I fell into hell. The heat hit me like a physical punch. My suit started to smoke. I landed next to the creature. It was horrible, a humanoid made of coal and lava, with eyes that were just glowing embers. It was distracted by the meat. I saw a small steel door behind the fire altar. I ran. My dislocated shoulder swung, the pain irrelevant now. Adrenaline was the only fuel. The creature saw me. It dropped the meat. It preferred live prey. It stretched an arm of fire in my direction. Ho, ho, ho. It roared. The sound was like a building collapsing. I threw myself against the steel door. It was locked. There was a rotary valve. I tried to turn it with my right hand. Jammed too hot. My glove melted, burning the palm of my hand. The creature grabbed my leg. I felt the boot melt and the skin of my calf cook. I screamed. I used my dislocated shoulder. I shoved my left arm, the dead arm, into the valve lever. I used the weight of my body to turn it. I felt the ligaments in my shoulder finish tearing, but the valve turned, the door opened, the vacuum sucked the air, and me out. The door slammed shut, severing the fire fingers of the creature that tried to follow me. I fell onto a cold marble floor, freezing air conditioning, silence. I was in a living room, a fancy living room decorated with a beautiful Christmas tree, full of lights. On the sofa, sitting with a glass of vodka, was Valdemir Clove. He looked at his watch, 05:58 a.m. He smiled. Congratulations, you are the first one who made it. I tried to get up. I couldn't. My body was destroyed. Burns, broken bones, exhaustion. Clove stood up and walked over to me. He didn't look impressed. He looked disappointed. I lost the bet. He said, taking a checkbook from his pocket, I bet my partners you would die in the siphon. He wrote the check, 10,000,000. He threw the paper on my chest, which was covered in soot and blood. The medical rescue is waiting outside. Merry Christmas, Davy. He turned his back. I looked at the check. Then I looked at the fireplace in that room. It was a fake fireplace, gas, clean, but there was a fire poker next to it. A heavy iron bar with a sharp point. The pain vanished. The exhaustion vanished. Only hate remained. Hate is a powerful anesthetic. I stood up. I grabbed the poker with my burned right hand. The raw flesh of my palm stuck to the cold metal, but I squeezed. Clove was pouring more vodka, his back to me. You know, he said, next year I'm going to make the duct narrower. I think 25 centimeters is the human limit. I walked up to him, silent as soot. Clove, I called. He turned. What? You forgot something. What? The present. I buried the tip of the poker in his chest. He didn't scream. He just widened his eyes, surprised. The glass of vodka fell and shattered on the floor. I pushed the iron until it went through. He fell to his knees, choking on his own blood. I dragged his body. Clove was heavy, fat. I dragged him to the secret door I had come out of, the furnace door. I opened the valve. The heat exploded outward. The creature inside roared, hungry. It had finished the meat I brought. It wanted more. I looked at Clove. He was still alive, eyes blinking, trying to speak. You wanted to prove the physics, I said. Let's see if you fit. I shoved his head into the oven. The creature grabbed him. I saw the fire claws pulling the expensive suit, the fat skin. Clove screamed. It was a long, high-pitched scream that echoed through the ducts of the entire tower. I closed the door. I spun the lock. I picked up the check from the floor. I walked out the front door of the mansion. The medical team was outside in the ambulance. They ran to attend to me. My God, what happened in there? The paramedic asked, cutting my melted suit. Work accident. I replied, closing my eyes. The chimney was clogged. That was a year ago. I had the surgeries. My shoulder has titanium pins. My skin has grafts. My mother had her transplant and is doing well. I bought a beach house, far from chimneys, far from holes, but I don't light fires. Never again, and sometimes in the silence of the night I hear it, coming from the sink drain or the air conditioning piping, muffled screams, and a guttural laugh made of fire. Clove is still there. The creature didn't kill him. I think it transformed him. He is part of the soot now, and every Christmas I feel like he's trying to climb back up.